I'm not going to do that. So I'll just run through this as I'll try to make it sound like I'm not reading it. We'll see how that works. All right. Hey, this is Shaun with Atlanta Tennis Podcast, where every conversation starts with tennis, but may not end with tennis. We're in the Rejuvenate studio in Duluth, Georgia. And this episode, we talk with Kip Cobb, and we will get to that in just a minute. But right now, I'd like to thank our previous guest, who is actually the owner of the Rejuvenate studios in Duluth, Georgia, and full disclosure, my wife. So I'm a little bit biased. But we spoke with her, and we'll get you to that link in the links below, and you can check that out when you get the chance. If you are interested in listening to our conversation with that, like I said, we'll put the links below, and we'll make sure all of that is available to you. With me today, as always, is Bobby Schindler. We're recording in the studio just outside of Atlanta, which is why we call this thing the Atlanta Tennis Podcast. We definitely do not limit ourselves to talk exclusively about Atlanta tennis, but that's where we live. So that's where we're going to start. Bobby, how's it going?
All right, Shaun, how are you today?
I'm doing okay. We got Kip here as well. We'll say hi to him, but I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to give Kip no chance, put him completely on the spot, and we're going to pretend we didn't send him an email ahead of time, and we're just going to throw him right onto the spot. Who are you, and why do we care?
Man, Kip Cobb, born and raised in the Atlanta tennis market. Probably started playing, was 4 or 5 years old. Both parents played. Just grew up around the game, had some fantastic coaches, and just lived and loved the Atlanta tennis scene for a long time. 47 years old now.
47 years old. I wouldn't have brought up how old I am. I mean, I'm only 33.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's good.
Right. I think Bobby's 33 as well.
I'm obviously the granddad in this picture. So that's okay.
So you grew up playing in Atlanta?
Yes, I did. Born and raised, and I know that that's a rarity now. Not a lot of people are from. Yeah, that's right. There's not many of us left, brother.
Bobby was
not many of us left
up north, right?
I grew up on Long Island, New York. Yes.
Oh, Long Island tennis. That's a different thing.
Completely, but I'm a Southerner since 17. I went south, went to the warmth in Texas, and have never left the South since. So.
Okay, so you're like me with less of the accent. Of that sounding like you're from Georgia.
It will come out. I'm trying. I'm going to be good.
From time to time, right? Time to time.
Exactly. I like it. So Kip, you said 4 years old you started tennis? Was that?
Yeah, started playing at 4. Remember kind of picking up a racket.
Awesome.
Don't know if you remember Terminus down in the Marietta, Windy Hill area.
That was way too far away from me.
Yeah, then spun off to Atlanta Health and Racket Club. So I remember having a racket in my hand early on. My mom was a AA player. My dad was an A player. Remember them coming home and, grabbing the tennis racket and swinging around the living room. No telling how many things I broke in the living room back then. Because that was a full-size racket now. They didn't have junior rackets back then.
That's the same thing. I started at 9, full-size racket. Now we have all the fancy new equipment.
Oh, yeah.
I like it. So your parents were tennis players, so that's obviously what got you into tennis, right?
Absolutely, yeah. They both got me into it, but I was also lucky just with all the coaches. When I started taking coaching early on, the Joe Becknells, Woody Hoblitzel, Mike Leach, Danny Alea, Evo. I had so many coaches, Jerry Baskin. Gosh, coaches from top to bottom that I all took from, and I'm probably leaving some out. So if they ever see this, I apologize if I forgot to mention you.
They can call us and come on the show and
exactly.
Make sure we know that Kip is one of their products.
Yeah, and I think from that coaching also kind of kept me around the game and also inspiring to one day be a coach myself.
I like it. Yeah, I was on the growing up in Atlanta myself. I was in the Gwinnett side.
Yep.
So I was Dave Matthews and a lot of the guys over here. You mentioned the clubs that I know now because of that Marietta side, but when I was a kid, that was the other side of the world.
No, it was, and I know you didn't even ask this question, but that brought me up this way. I know we all have a mutual friend in Billy Pate, but Billy Pate was my assistant coach in college. And actually, when I left, my first pro coaching job was the Tucker Racket Health and Fitness Center in Tucker, Georgia, straight out of college. I was charging a whopping $25 for an hour private, and I got 100% of it.
That's
and
nice.
I thought I'd made it.
That's what I charged for my first tennis lesson too.
Yep. And then literally left there. Billy hired me. He and Angela Owens and went to the Concourse Athletic Club at the King and Queen buildings. And that's where probably the real coaching career began, there with those guys, and where I ended up meeting my wife there also. So 22 years ago, almost to the day.
Kip, just so you know, I did call Billy, so I am a fact checker. So don't go too far out of line, because Billy's giving me all the background. On top of, I do remember the good old concourse days and the Sunday pool.
There you go. Yes, the Sunday pool, and I've got plenty of stories on Billy, so he's got to be careful about that fact checking thing. I got something on him too.
I lived with him. I got a lot on him.
I bet you do. Oh yeah.
We'll have to start a dirt. What dirt do you have on What Tennis Pro page on the site?
Oh, exactly. That's a good one.
PG,
right? A good selling point. Be like, all right, look, for $20 a month,
right,
we'll get you in, and you can learn all the dirt you need to learn about your tennis. It's probably a bad idea, considering we like most of our friends.
Yeah, no doubt. That could get hairy quickly.
Get us in trouble.
Absolutely.
Got to be careful with the fact checking. But that's fun, because you were a few years ahead of me playing in this area, but we would have known each other by name only really anyway, because we'd see each other twice a year at, well, where was that? At North Fulton and South Fulton. And that was basically all we'd run into each other.
Or some pro-am. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt.
Yeah. And I was thinking back, that's fun. Well, we're bringing in guys like you to have the most interesting conversations we can possibly have. The interesting thing about that is I haven't figured out who decides what an interesting conversation is. So we've crafted magic questions to lead us along the path to get us there. And my favorite question right now, and Bobby agrees with me, it's our current favorite question, and we'll throw it at you to see where this leads us. And we've got a few minutes. We can let it ramble on if we need to, we need to talk as long as we need to talk about something interesting. I'm not saying we have to go complete John McEnroe troll women's tennis, but you say whatever we want here at some level. If you were the king of tennis, what would you change?
Ooh. Man. Well,
king of tennis, anything in the world, maybe a flat out, here, you know what? We need to just abolish this completely.
Yeah.
And again, nobody's king of tennis, so we don't get to hold anybody accountable. And maybe the idea leads to something more reasonable.
Right. Well, it's kind of two-part, right? So one of the biggest things that has driven me crazy from being a coach, especially with somebody who's new to tennis, whether it's, and mostly kids, but also adults, I would say, is the scoring. I would change the score to a more simplified way. When you're trying to teach a kid, I love watching my little 7 and 8 year olds when we start doing scoring for the first time, and I go 15, 30, and they all go 45. And I go, no, 40. And they all look at me, and they look over at their parents, and they look back at me like, no, you're kidding. It's a joke, right? And then all of a sudden you throw in the word deuce, or the add in, add out. And from a coach's standpoint of trying to teach them the game quicker, that's one thing. The second thing, and it's more of a modern day issue that I have, is the new lines. I cannot stand the blue lines on the tennis court for the kids. I love the ball idea. Love the orange, green dot, red dot. I get all that. That makes sense to me. I get it. The lines are ridiculous. They're confusing for kids to try to teach the newbies. Not just that, but if you've ever noticed, if you're standing on the blue baseline of a kid baseline on one side, and you try to look over and find the blue line on the other side, it is very difficult to do. So if you're the kid on the other side, you don't even know if your shot's in or out most times. You don't even know if it's that close. So that also bothers me, because you could have a kid not telling the truth and saying out when the ball was, not even an inch in, but a foot in. And you wouldn't.
I think I know that kid.
Yep. Oh yeah. I'm sure we all do. Absolutely. So those are I know that's twofold. Those are the two things. If I'm king of tennis, I'm making those changes.
I like it. You know what I want to do? I'm going to throw Bobby a softball here. You pick one, I'll take the other.
Well, the first one is easy. I always use the line when people ask me about the scoring. I say, well, remember, the French invented the game. So there's no need to go any further.
C'est très vrai.
We're done, right?
So
It's
true.
blame it on the French. We're done. And as far as the balls are concerned, from a coaching perspective, it's frustrating. You're telling the kid to swing out, and yet we're giving them loaded ammunition and then not allowing them to swing and hit the ball as hard as they can because we've shortened the court. So it's.
Oh, but we have to make it fair for everybody. It's
Yes.
got to be an equal playing field. We can't have the kid who's dominating anymore because it's not fair to little Johnny.
Little Johnny, gotta be careful.
Little Johnny came home. He's upset. Yeah. Little Johnny's upset because he got beat really bad. But I'd like to just tell little Johnny, hey, work harder, get better.
That's very fatherly of you. You're going to give him a motherly hug?
Yeah, exactly. No participation trophies in the Cobb household.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go the opposite route from Bobby because I'll take the other side of both of your ideas.
Okay.
The scoring, and maybe this is how we try to figure out the evolution from why we do the kids starting with just learning a tiebreaker. Number one, I think that's perfect because a tiebreaker is probably actually, I think, more confusing for the kids with the switching of the serve and how it works. So learning the tiebreaker, I also think the tiebreaker is the most important game we play in tennis, considering when it's played and what it means. So starting the kids with that and the length of the scoring, I like it. Now, that's not no, if you were king of the world, I'd vote against. Do you vote against kings? I don't think it works that way.
You don't get a vote.
No, I just got to hope I'm the court jester and not the guy who gets his head lopped off.
Exactly.
I think tennis scoring is the most genius thing ever invented. I think it is absolutely elegant. It allows to actually track and score and reward momentum. As a basketball guy, Bobby, you're a basketball guy, right? I just made that up. It's about you. Quick, pretend to be a basketball guy. Sure. As a basketball guy, Bobby, if you have this momentum in this basketball game and the swings and the excitement, and at the end of the game you lose by one, you can't look at the score and know anything about the game, but you could look at tennis score. You look at a tennis match and go, what happened there? Oh my gosh. I win the set 7-6. And then all of a sudden what happens? I'm down love 3. And I got to figure that. I think it's so elegant. Is it confusing? Sure. And it comes down to the tennis coach to be able to learn 7 or 8 different ways to teach it. Right. But I think it's beautiful. I think it's an absolutely wonderfully elegant system. And yes, we can blame the French.
Yeah.
But man, it is a really cool concept.
Yeah. And I like I guess the overall match score idea of the numbers. It's more the in-game scoring that I probably have more of a problem with. But you're right. I think what is amazing about the scoring of tennis is that sometimes the 6-2, 6-2 score doesn't tell the complete story of the match.
Sure.
If you were charting a match and broke that down, that match could have been separated by 10 points. You never know. I mean, I'm not doing the math correctly there, but I mean, you could have a 6-2, 6-2 match.
Sounds about
Every
right.
single game goes to deuce, or I mean, the chances of it being 8 points, you get my drift.
Yep.
But the 2 games that you won could have been 40-love games, and all of a sudden those total point scores could actually level out a little bit. But that side of it, like more of the end game thing, I have a problem with the unique.
So what if we go? What did we do? We did the no ad scoring where it was simply 1, 2, 3, and then the next point 1. We could do 1, 2, 3, and then do either deuce an advantage or tied an advantage.
Yep.
If we just take out 15, 30, 40, if we just take out those words, and still keep the tie. So I'm not playing a game where it's all right, 7-6, 7 all, 8-6. That's I like the tied versus advantage because you're not worried about figuring out what number you're on.
Yep.
But maybe we just take out 15, 30, 40. Call it 1, 2, 3, still have the deuce concept, and we still get to keep that flow. And you're right. My response was more to the overall scoring, the set concept. I think personally, it's hockey. I think hockey should be won in the same way. You need to win 2 out of 3 quarters.
Hey, there you go.
Are there 3 quarters?
Three periods.
Periods.
3
That's
periods.
right. Quarter didn't sound right. Why are there only 3 quarters? That's how much of a hockey guy I am.
It's that you just did the same as like a calling it a soccer game instead of a match.
Yeah.
Same type of deal there.
So you got to win 2 out of 3 quarters in a hockey match.
Well, and it's funny that you said it the way that you did. That's actually one of the ways that I coach kids who are really struggling with the 15, 30, 40 flow, is that I will let them play a game and call it 1-0, 1-1. And that also helps teach with the whole odd and even.
Sure.
Of even being on the deuce, odd being on the ad.
Yep.
And it is an easier way to, maybe once they get that down and understand what side of the court they're serving to and where they're receiving, then you start getting more into the 15-34 and the proper scoring. It's a little bit easier because some kids, I mean, they just look at it, they're baffled. But if you just use basic numbers, it's a little bit easier to coach.
Yeah, I agree with that. Bobby, you see the same thing at Windermere?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's always great when they start playing out their USTA. That's a lesson, is dedicated to teaching them how to keep score, when to change sides on a tiebreaker. So, yeah, but it also leads to the originality and uniqueness of tennis.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Absolutely.
That is true. It is unique.
Yeah. And I think I'd agree with you, Kip, on the blue lines. And I get where they're coming from. Because if you've ever tried to play on a full court with pressureless tennis balls, it's really difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with an adult tennis racket, hitting a ball that far isn't that easy.
No.
But then also you end up with, it's not like soccer. They learn a different scoring on a different side. I mean, the soccer court is obviously smaller.
Right.
And you don't have to win a half to, like winning a set. But you're not learning a completely different thing when you age up.
Sure.
You're right. It's like the 8 and under tennis it's scored and it's sized and it's using different equipment than the very next level. And then the same thing when you go up. So we've created 4 different concepts.
Yeah.
The kids have to learn as they progress.
Yeah. And I mean, and I get it. And I know that they looked at other sports, right? I mean, they looked at football, and you look at Pee Wee football and know it's not 100-yard field, right? They shorten the field up. Basketball, they use half courts instead of full courts. So I understand the philosophy of it, but I think that was something in other sports that have been doing that for a very long time, where tennis, to me, because I grew up playing probably with a racket that was much bigger than I was. And then also at the same time, a court being regular size, you learned how to hit the ball. And I don't mind the ball system and the ball colors, but man, the lines are tough, because I see a lot of kids that I coach, and the kids that can really hit the ball and strike the ball well, struggling to keep the ball within the blue lines. And I think it's almost a detriment to your better players, where it does give an advantage to a kid who's can't hit it as well. So I guess that's my biggest pet peeve from a coaching aspect.
And you see that consistently with the orange dot balls on the 60-foot court. They're still struggling because those balls don't go all that far.
No, they don't go that far. But I mean, you gotta. I've got a couple 7-8-year-olds that can really hit the ball well. And just watching them kind of struggle, when I think they've hit from a coach's eye, wow, you really struck that well, and it still went 1.5 feet out.
Yeah.
You're almost like, okay, so here now from a control standpoint and maybe slowing it down a little bit. Yeah, there's some coaching advantage there to help them. Hey, but at the same time, when you watch and strike it well, God, that shouldn't have gone out.
You want to encourage it, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess that's my big beef with it.
So that takes me to something that Bobby and I talk about a lot. And this one, I didn't send you ahead of time. I am curious what you think about this. I'm not worried about whether or not the ball's in or out, because I want these kids not competing. I want them perfecting their technique. So from my point of view, I have a lot of our 10 and unders and 8 and unders with orange dot balls that are kind of playing on a full-size court. I'm not worried about the blue lines at all, because I'm actually encouraging them not to go play tennis matches. I'm encouraging them not to go toward leagues, because I watch them, and as soon as they start keeping score, their technique is right out the window.
Yep.
Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that even more with more of my teenage kids than I see it with my younger kids, especially young ladies, of almost struggling more in match play and getting a little bit more conservative. But to stay on topic and talk about, with the lines, I agree with you. And it's probably something I don't discuss too much with the kids in lessons. It's more internal that bothers me about the lines. And I even like to mix in using different versions of, if a kid's a red dot ball, I mix in green and also orange. Sometimes I even have a practice with real ball, just so they adjust to it and or I guess exposed to it earlier on. So it's not such a shock to their system when they start playing with it. And even do some real court at times. So I like your philosophy of not really worrying about the balls being in or out, but, perfecting the form.
That's something Bobby and I talk about a lot. And I know that goes against, and this is one of the concepts within this podcast that we want to be able to have this conversation, because I know USPTA isn't necessarily going to agree. And USPTA in the same way, they want kids in leagues because that's what they do.
Right.
So to have any coaches saying, all right, guys, the longer you don't play a match, the better your technique will become ingrained, and your long-term benefits of your coaching, I think, are more efficient that way. Right. I don't know that we get a good response from USPTA or USTA if we start making comments like that.
I would agree.
By we, I mean me. So I'll take complete credit for making that comment.
They're trying to grow the game, right? So, and that is, and them just practicing doesn't involve them. So you're right. I mean, they want them in leagues as much as possible. And that's why you see so many flex leagues and everything else popping up now. Everybody's coming up with a new way to play tennis, but at the end of the day, I've always just, I guess one of the taglines, it's just tennis, let play it the way it should be played.
Not that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal.
Come on. But Bobby, what was the comment from the what was it? The thing we attended, the conference, of like trying to convince yourself that you're really important. That goes against, hey guys, it's just a sport.
Yeah, well, the coaches, so much of it is coach driven. How can we make it? It's our failing. And I was like, that's a lot to put on us. And without acknowledging there's another player involved. You're over exaggerating your importance, and you're under hopefully if your player becomes a star, that you have a bigger role in it.
Yeah.
I believe in Nick Bollettieri. He looks for the kid who's the most competitive, because that's an impossible thing to teach. Yeah. I can teach you forehand. I cannot give you heart. And
can't teach contempt.
Yeah. And
not that you'd want to, but it's the Bobby Fischer had contempt for his opponents. It's that I'd rather, what was the phrase? And forgive the figure of speech, but I'd rather spit on you than lose to you. And you'd see two brothers, and you see the one kid that was like, I'm not losing to this other kid. And the other kid was the nice kid. It was like, I like the nice kid better as a person, but he's not going to go as far as the kid that just hates to lose.
Well, look at the Williams sisters.
Yeah.
That's true. When Richard was interviewed, and Venus was the elder, she was coming on tour, and everybody was excited about Venus. And Richard looked at the camera and said, "Yeah, but there's another one. It's home. That's as mean as a snake. Where do you see her?" And and here's Serena competing at 37, 38 years old. Skills are not what they were, but you're never going to find a better competitor. Somebody who wanted to win, and even throw Jimmy Connors into the formula of that's how they won, contempt. We're going to show you, and I think that's a champion. They find different ways to win, but one of the more effective ways historically has been.
And my wife won't find that tolerable. She said, we're not teaching our children that. I mean, that's just not going to be how she's going to view the world. I'm like, okay, well, we'll never have a number one in the world tennis player as a child, which is fine. But some parents aren't going to want that for their children, and that's probably necessary, a necessary component. Probably not a thing that we deal with as we working with the 7-year-olds or the 14-year-olds that aren't necessarily on an ATP path.
No, and I mean, well, the other thing that you guys probably find too is not being afraid to put your kids in a position to fail. And I enjoyed probably getting my teeth kicked in at an early age and playing 18 and unders when I was 12 and 13, playing Alta, because Alta, at that age, and we all went through this, if you were a good tennis player back when we played Alta, junior Alta, you won a lot. The competition was and there were so many kids playing at that time, and the levels were so all over the place that your win percentage was probably 90% plus. And you
like you said, playing on the 18 and under team, I was the 12-year-old on the 16 and under team, not because I was just that good, but because the talent wasn't quite there in Alta yet.
Absolutely. And I still can remember some city final matches of, and y'all probably don't remember this name. And I haven't heard his name in forever. I'm just thinking about him now. But I mean, the first city finals I won at probably 11 or 12, and I beat Murphy Payne, who used to play out of Indian Hills. And I beat him in the finals. I'd never beat the kid ever. I played him in several tournaments, never beat him. And on this day, man, I couldn't miss, and beat him 8-3 down at the Cab Tennis Center.
That's a good feeling,
to win the city finals. And I'll never forget that memory. But, my parents at an early age, but playing different sports too, and competing, we wanted to go outside the box. I wanted to go play in tournaments and get beat, and that was okay. But now you see a lot of kids,
type. You have to be able to handle that.
Well, and that was back to y'all's point too, like with the Bollettieri, theory of that competitiveness and that hunger and that everything else. Because now with our society, we want to keep our kids in certain areas, not just tennis, where they succeed, and not let them step out of that little bubble. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, I know lots of kids who they're taking private lessons, they're going to academies, but they're only playing in flex leagues and Alta. They're not playing in tournaments. They're not going to compete against the big dogs. And to me, I think I guess it depends on the goal, but I always ask a kid early on, and the parents, what's the end game here? What are we striving for? Are we just trying to stay in shape? Do we just want to be introduced to the game? Do we want to make the high school team? Are we going for a college scholarship? And usually it's one of those things, right? I mean, every once in a while you got the parent who thinks their kid's the next Andre Agassi or, Serena or Venus Williams. But I mean, I don't see that as much as I used to.
Sure. So we're closing it down. I'm at a hard stop at 2:00. My wife needs her studio back. At this point, Kip, you've tolerated us, and it sounds like you're similar to us, that we could probably go on for another few hours if we really wanted to. And thankfully the weather timed itself well for our conversation, because none of us are itching going, I should be on the court right now. I should be on the court with the rain. Nope. is how it is. But now's your time for self-promotion. And we've got 4 minutes. What's OTR doing on the rise? What's your deal? What's your world?
Yeah, kind of cranked this back up. I found myself back coaching tennis full time. I've always stayed in it, but just recently with COVID and everything else, and furloughed from my old job, started On the Rise Tennis. So I'm owner operator out here in Sewanee, Georgia. Got a little 4-court facility. I'm probably unique, and I've got high performance kids. I've got brand new beginners. I got cheerleaders, lacrosse players. I've got adults, beginners to, intermediate to high level. I teach a little bit of everything. So you can find, I've got a website being built now, but from a social standpoint, everything you can find at Kip Cobb Tennis. And that's literally the 10 spelled out. So at Kip Cobb 10S. And those are everything from Twitter, YouTube, everything can be found there. And I do have a Facebook page that's on there as well with that same tagline, and we'll have a website up shortly.
Good. I was wondering, I checked out the website as well, and I found an On the Rise Tennis in Minnesota or something, but I assumed that wasn't you.
No, that's not me. It will be soon, though. It will be soon. Yeah, there is. I think that's the modern LLC concept in Georgia. That's right. There is no LLC in Georgia. It looks like the 2 previous owners are no longer, from what I can find.
That's next. I like it. That's good. Got to have that going. Got to have the website. I see your Facebook presence is pretty good. We interact quite a bit. I like your drop shot challenge and things like that. That's a lot of fun.
Got to make it fun, man. Got to keep it interesting.
Absolutely. And I think this is the kind of thing that'll help a lot of us, because like I said, I'm saying it a lot because I want to change as much of the culture as I can. I did this with my own business in the extracurricular world in preschools and elementary schools. It was very, I don't, cutthroat sounds, hyperbolic, but it was, what's mine is mine. And, like there's no cooperative nature of we're here for the kids or we're here for the families. And the concept now that I have, which is how can we help you? How can Ankle Biters, as an example, help on the rise? How can Windermere partner with what you're doing in the neighborhoods there? How can we all be friends rather than worried about this is my client and this is your client?
Man, I'm open and I'm all game for that. I encourage kids to take from other coaching and because I think I might say something differently to a kid than you are, and sometimes it just connects. So I'm always open to doing things and working together. I've never had the philosophy of, oh, this is my kid, he can't go anywhere else or whatever else. The same thing with adults, I mean, look, go get a different opinion. And I love that. So I encourage it. And I love working with you guys and really appreciate y'all having me on.
And that's a good jumping off part for another day, Kip, because of the position in Atlanta. We're just not kid based. We see a lot of the same things, scenarios, but they're playing out with adults, which brings in an entirely different set of egos and management of people. So it makes for an interesting occupation for us down here, and another day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
we'll bring Kip back as well. I really appreciate you making time. It's a fun new type of conversation, which is, hey, let's, if I'm being honest, let's actually be honest as we do this. And we'll definitely do it again. But I appreciate you guys making time.
And Shaun, if I could give a quick shout out, because we mentioned his name quite a bit, just to give us all some props, because he's a great guy. So everybody knows Billy Pate got me my first job as well. Kip he's a mentor of ours. Billy was a former head coach at Alabama, and he's the current head tennis coach at Princeton. So we had a pretty good mentor to learn from. Yeah. So, and hopefully Billy will join us someday as well. But so
let's bring him on.
Kip learned from one of the better ones that are out there in the industry. So
sure did.
We appreciate you coming on, Kip.
Yeah, we'll have to do a segment with some Billy Pate stories. I've got some good ones down at Nationals in Corpus Christi. He's taught me a lot.
We'll have a full Billy Pate episode.
You have a couple of interesting contemporaries. Jonathan Fralick or Spencer Reed mean anything to you?
Yes, I was just coaching Spencer's daughter out here not too long ago. Spencer, Ricky Bowers. Do you remember Ricky?
My Lord.
Ricky Bowers. How about Cord Schwartz?
Yes. Ricky and Spencer, they can't be, because this is going to be PG. So we're going to keep it there. We'll keep them out of it. But
my freshman year, it was Spencer, Ricky Bowers, Jim Harp, and myself, all on the same team. If that gives you all of us living together, hanging out together, those are good times.
Yes.
I want to hear about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that for sure. But
definitely
we got to run
our show.
Oh, okay. We'll have to put a parent advisory on that one.
That's right.
Exactly.
But I appreciate it, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
See you guys. Bye-bye.